John, this is just lovely to be talking to you because you're one of my favourite musicians
I'm flattered.
anywhere. So
Likewise.
tell me about your musical background. Tell me about your parents.
Well, I could talk quite a bit about my mother, but my mother,
Well, let's talk about your father first of all.
well, well, both parents are interesting. My, my grandfather, one grandfather was a farmer in Clayton, New York. That's my father's father. And my other grandfather was a missionary in China, where my mother was born and lived the first 8 years of her life. So that in a small town in upper New York State, that made her exceptional. And I think maybe we all felt a bit exceptional because of that. She would, the teacher would find out about grade 5 that my mother was born in China. Oh, we're China's the next unit. Can she come in and talk? So, and I was the third child, so they knew perfectly well that she was capable of this, having done it twice before with my sisters. So she would bring in.
So did it give you an interest in China?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's here I am in the Pacific Rim, and I have a lot of Chinese friends and parents of students, and I have one friend in China said, I'll help you organize your visit. When are you coming? And I do feel that I need to go to complete her circle around the world.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. So when did the piano start for you? Were you a young child put to the piano?
We didn't have so much money. My father was unemployed quite a bit in those years, and it was a Christmas present to have some piano lessons. My mother noticed that, well, I'm writing some memoirs for my children, so the way I tell the story, which I think is true, she came sort of coming in, running from the kitchen to find out why my sister's pieces weren't sounding so good. And it was me trying to pick out the melodies of her thing, so the repertoire she was learning.
So what sort of age was John at that point?
Well, I must have been. I want to be 5 in the stories, but I'm pretty sure it was for Christmas after I turned 7 that I was given four piano lessons. So that's all I could afford.
So tell me,
I was taught for free.
When you got these 4 piano lessons, it wasn't something they could wrap up. How did you feel as a young child? Did you feel excited by that, or did you feel deflated that you didn't get the toy train set?
No. I thought this will be interesting. I just, I didn't jump up and down.
No.
But I just thought, this. I think probably one attraction was that they were with the organist at the church, and I quite fancied making loud noises on the organ and wearing those robes. So I saw, that was a plus, that I would get to meet the organist. And the other plus, I suppose, was that I could, my sister is 5 years older, and I was going to be treated like my sister. So I bet that was part of it.
Yes.
Too.
And do you remember those 4 lessons?
I don't remember the lessons. I remember that he agreed to teach me for free after that. And I have qualms sometimes when I have students who come in and play their hand and exercise, and they fumble for 2 or 3 bars, and then they get going. And I know it's because they haven't practiced it, but they, pick it up. And I'm sure that was me. Because I do remember, just managing to get through my hand for the week.
But John, let's just reflect for a minute how difficult it is to develop a love of practicing. It's not straightforward, is it?
Oh, I didn't love it. I mean, I played because I liked to play, but I didn't really practice.
No.
I was in the choir. They started an all-male choir, so that was a big part of my musical training. I think very, very important. Whenever I read Haydn was in, he learned in the choir, and Schubert learned in the choir, and Bach's sons. Yeah, that's a good way to start. If you know about singing, then that's all. I mean, everything else is just mechanics.
Yes. So we have to get to the point where you are the pianist that you are today from those free piano lessons.
Yeah.
So how
I'm
did that
reminded
happen?
of the title of your biography. How did this happen?
Yes.
Because as I'm writing for my children about it, I think I was, for some reason, well, I had a good ear and I had perfect pitch, and learning to read was never a problem. I could always read. I would decide one summer I was going to read through the hymn book, so I read from beginning to end. I read all the hymns. And, I mean, it's that skill is innate. That's not my fault, but it's that enabled me to to survive and succeed.
Yes.
Yeah. I accompanied the chorus in high school, the choruses and the county chorus and so on. And I just, play this. All right. I didn't. That's really the secret.
Yes.
And
you finished school, and what happened after that?
I finished school, and my parents had met in Potsdam, New York, where there's a branch of SUNY, State University of New York, and had a very, very good music school. And my father had gone to Clarkson Technical College, so they said, "Get in the car. We'll go look at Potsdam." Big, that junior year, well, like year 12.
Yes.
Not even year 13 in New Zealand. So we went and looked at Clarkson and had nice brick buildings, and we went to the Crane Department of Music, and the woman was about to retire who had been my mother's boss when she worked in the office. And "Oh, John, your son plays the piano. We'll give him an audition. You can go up and play with Sam Spurbach or whatever something else." And so I went and played for them, and then we got a letter from Helen Hosmer that they had 3 scholarships, and one was for $400 a year, and that covered most of in those days, that was like full tuition.
Yes.
And they gave me that scholarship, and I thought, well, okay, I guess I'll do that.
Just like that.
Having no idea, having no idea what I was in for, because I had never practiced. So I got there, and there were people from New York and people who could really play. And then I started seriously practice.
And was that a really special time in your life?
Well, I think so. Yeah. I had a teacher who was on sabbatical, and she was a real professional pianist. She was from the outside world.
Yes.
So that was a help, and that's where it started. Practice 2 hours a day, practice 4 hours a day. I had a friend who was a clarinetist, like you, Steve Gurko, and he had been to High School of Music and Art, and he'd studied with a famous teacher in New York, and he took me under his wing. He was a senior. "All right, get in that practice room. I have to go to freshman orientation." That's bullshit.
Yeah.
Just go play the piano.
Yeah.
I'll get in trouble with it.
Yeah.
Just go practice. What you need to do, you're here to practice.
Yes.
So that was one of those things. There were these fortuitous Irene Rosenberg Grau being there as a replacement, and Steve Gurko. We were going to play this Brahms. Okay, for my recital, I'm doing the Nielsen Clarinet Concerto. You have to learn this. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing.
So you were just doing it.
Well, I had a.
But there must have been some absolute high points where you got such an incredible sort of burst of inspiration from it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, tremendously exciting to play the music and hear the music and sing in a choir of 400 voices doing the Verdi Requiem,
Yes.
Things like that.
Yes.
Oh, it was tremendously exciting.
And once you left college, what happened?
Well, I transferred to Eastman and then went, was at Eastman for 2 years, you know.
So when you were at Eastman, what did you think you were going to do in your musical life?
No idea.
I think
I just ended up accompanying a lot of
Yes.
people.
'Cause
So I should have realized that I was. Irene Rosenberg told my parents. She said, I doubt he'll have a career as a soloist, but he might be able to be an accompanist, and that's what it turned out to be. And of course, now I know it's obvious, but I didn't know then.
Yes, I think that is a situation for so many music students. They're busy preparing for their next exam or concert practice, whatever. They don't have time to think about the big picture.
Eugene List, you know, I got my performer's certificate and played Moving of Brahms Concerto with the orchestra, and that was lovely, and a performer's recital and so on. And you see, Eastman School of Music in Rochester is somewhat insular, and people tend to stay. So we got to be towards the end of the year, and Eugene List said, "John, what are you going to do now?" I said, "Oh, I guess I'll probably get a master's here, and I don't know." You have to go to New York. Yeah.
So why did he say that?
Well, because he saw he was a big concert artist, and he had gone to Juilliard, and I think he saw they might have possibilities there, you know.
So the theme that's coming through this is that other people see the possibilities in John much more than John sees the possibilities in John. Would that be right?
I think it hits the nail on the head.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You had the talent shines, but
well, I just liked playing the music.
Yes. You know? Yeah. Well, it's.
And at Eastman, I was practicing 8 hours a day, and you know, just ridiculous 8, 9 hours, and thinking that was going to help, and it may have, but
in some ways, it's like the only alternative you've got. So you do it, don't you? Yeah. But in fact, maybe there is a better way. I don't know. So you go to New York, and tell us about New York.
Well, New York is scary. There had been a freshman trip from Crane to New York. So my first year, way up in the boondocks, we got on a bus and we went to New York City. And I had seen a movie at that point in my life. This is probably boring to the whole world, but of Rosina Levine at Juilliard and her students. And, you know, one of them played a scale that, you know, I'd never heard anything like that. It was so magical. And so I sort of stored that away. And then we got to New York and went around and stood in front of Juilliard. And I don't think I said it to anybody, but I just think, I want to be there. So when Eugene said, you know, you've got to, I'll call up Adele Marcus and arrange an audition. You have to go to Juilliard. You have to go to New York. I thought, I like that idea. I like the sound of that. I don't know how it can happen. You know.
Yeah. So
well,
what happened?
That's what happened. I auditioned. I got in, and Adele Marcus said, "You have to come to Aspen to study with me if you want to be in my class." So okay, I went to Aspen, and that was more or less a Juilliard summer school. So I in the end, I ended up going out to Aspen six summers. So I learned a lot there and got some experience playing in the orchestra, you know, playing keyboard parts in the orchestra, which turned out later to be, you know, one of my jobs.
Yes, yes. So after and Juilliard was extraordinary time for you.
Well, I wasn't happy because the good pianists had been there since preschool and all knew each other, and
Yes.
you're not accepted into the. You're not part of it, sort of. You're there. I went to, one of the disappointments was I went to my audition for chamber music, and at Eastman, chamber music was read through piano trio or all of these, play some chamber music with people. And I thought, well, at least they'll have me read a Beethoven violin sonata with somebody, because I played through all of those. And I'd had a summer job, I think, as a surveyor's helper, and I wasn't in great shape. So I've got my audition with the famous Felix Gallmer, who was, for chamber music. And then, and I looked around, I went into the audition, and I thought, where's chamber music? I mean, I didn't say that.
No.
And he said, I need to hear you play. I said, okay. I don't have anything to play. And he said, well, what did you audition with? Back in April or something.
Yes.
I played the Wanderer fantasy. Well, play that. And it's a disaster. So I failed the audition for chamber music. Famous moment. How did that happen? Well, it happened because I had no idea. A real pianist has pieces ready to play at the drop of a hat. Well, I wasn't that kind of pianist. I'd been practicing. When I had the time that summer, I just practiced what I felt like.
Yes.
I thought, well, I've got to learn the Brahms Paganini variations. They're the hardest thing. Eugene played them, and if I could play these, I'll be good.
Yeah. So from Juilliard?
Well, I started getting work. I accompanied. I did get the fellowship to accompany the chorus at Juilliard, so I got to play the Verdi Requiem with all the other people, Emmanuel Axe, and all the people other pianists who had me in the choir. I got to play.
Yes.
So that had its sort of small satisfaction. But I did begin. I started out accompanying some of the amateur choirs in New York, and then people found me. I started accompanying in a couple of voice studios of famous teachers, and one thing that happened was Eugene called the woman at Columbia, at CAMI, Columbia Artists, and there's somebody here that you should have on your list of accompanists. So I did go out with 3 singers and go all around the States in a car playing one program, including a piece that I had arranged of Bernstein's. I mean, I was very proud of myself.
And so you should be.
So I just, I found my way.
And am I right in saying that you got the call to go to someone's place and accompany a clarinet player of particular international note?
Oh, I've forgotten that story. Yeah, well,
can you tell that story, because this is one of the great clarinet stories of the world?
Oh, okay. Because I had gotten a call from a famous singer just down the street from her that I'm doing this small part in Verdi, but it's for Schulte, so I need somebody to play. And she'd gotten my name from Juilliard, so when she found out I could fake my way through Wagner opera, I was on her list, and I ended up touring with her. But that's not the story you want to hear. Aspen led to my knowing Gerard Schwartz, and Gerard Schwartz led to my being in his music festival, Waterloo Music Festival, and in his New York Chamber Symphony. In the New York Chamber Symphony the clarinetist was Charles Rousseau, who I don't know if you know his name, but he was first call for ads and commercial music, and he was in. I think if you look on the recording of, L'Histoire du Soldat, I think that Stravinsky conducts supposedly. Yes. That's Charlie Rousseau. I mean, he was the top tier freelance. So Charlie said, don't tell people this, but Benny's going to go over to England, and he's going to play.
We're talking Benny Goodman.
And then Benny Goodman, yeah. I listened to Benny Goodman once in a while, and he's about to go to England, and he needs he needs a pianist to run through, the Weber Duo Concertant, and he's doing a Brahms clarinet sonata, so maybe I'll arrange a time and you show up. So I thought, oh, this is cool, because my father's not too interested in anything that I'm doing, and it doesn't make much sense to him. But we'd worn out the grooves of Benny Goodman at Carnegie Hall, because Benny Goodman was his hero. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go play for Benny Goodman and see what my dad says about this, because he's got to say something. So it was all arranged. I go to this huge building it's a fairly new building that takes up a whole block on the east side. It's just gargantuan. I think I went around twice before I could find the entrance that I was supposed to go into. So there's a doorman, and he said, "What, can I help you?" And I said, "Well, I have an appointment to see someone here." He said, "Well," and he walked me to the front desk, and there's another person in that uniform. "Can I help you?" I said, "I have an appointment with Mr. Goodman." Okay, so he gets on the phone. Yeah, what's your name? Oh, it's Van. Okay, send him up. Because John Van Buskirk was immediately Van. I mean,
Yeah.
Benny had nicknames for everybody. Apparently, I never called him Benny.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah. So we go up the elevator, and I'm met by someone else, but his uniform is white. He's a butler or something. So I'm here to play the piano with Mr. Goodman. Oh, well, all right. Well, so he walked me to the room and unlocked the door. And we went through, and then we went to another room. He unlocked the door, and I'm thinking, this wealthy man's going to have like a Steinway grand piano. So he had the piano was like the smallest. It's not an upright. It's called a console. It comes up to your waist.
Yeah.
So that was a little disappointing. So I sit there, and then Mr. Goodman walked in. Yeah, I'm not sure he spoke. And sat down and got out his clarinet, fiddled around a bit, and he had been soaking his reed. He put the clarinet in the what do you call that first?
Into the barrel, yeah.
In the barrel, and I'll get it wrong, but play me an A. So he's going, he's doing. So, and I've played that, and he goes, you play your A again, and I go, I'm playing A, and he's playing B flat.
Yeah.
So he fiddles around again. I don't think he scratched his head, but it was that kind of moment. No. So we play that note again. I said, I play an A. And so he takes the clarinet apart, and he looks at the barrels, and then he picks up the other clarinet in a different barrel. And then we're both playing A. I swear that he just mixed up the barrels or
the clarinets. Yeah.
It was hilarious.
And do you remember anything of his playing? Because he was just this grand doyen of swing clarinet players.
Yeah.
But playing Weber? Do you remember much?
It wasn't terrible. It was. You wouldn't say it was crisp, I think.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Anyway, you must have got paid a lot of money for that.
I don't know I'm not sure I ever got paid, actually. I never got paid. I thought the money would come from
Maybe
Charlie.
he was saving the money to buy a new piano. You must have been one of the highest earning musicians at the time.
Yeah, and one of the stingiest.
Yes.
By all reports.
Yes. Did he thank Fan at the end of it? Or? You don't remember him talking, really?
No. Yeah, it was out of body.
So, putting that aside, you were getting work as accompanying people.
Work. Yeah.
And
then Jerry started this chamber orchestra, and I played keyboards in that. You know.
Yes. And what repertoire did you play with that orchestra? Jerry Swartz had been the first trumpet with the...
He'd been a trumpet in the
New York Phil
from the age of 17 or something.
Yes.
And had begun conducting, and I guess he picked Boulez's ear quite a bit. I mean, he would study scores and go discuss them, and he began conducting a small dance company. I want to say Paul Taylor, but I'm not sure it was that one. And then I think Jerry was pretty well connected financially, it's possible. So suddenly there was a new music festival in Waterloo, New Jersey, where there's reconstructed sort of colonial village and a huge tent. And Jerry got his friends, all the top freelance players he knew, to be the woodwind faculty, woodwind and brass people. And the idea was to get string players to come, student string players, and so on. It was supposed to be student faculty sort of orchestra, and it worked quite well. But anyway, so I got involved in that, and also he'd also started, what was it? Almost Hurstbein at the 92nd Street Y got the bright idea of having Brandenburg concertos at the holidays, New Year's, Christmas. And Jerry was playing the trumpet in that, and he ended up sort of leading the group. And then, so that also slotted into his desires to transfer into conducting. So almost founded this little chamber orchestra. We played, they played everything. Well, there were the Brandenburgs. We did music for Martha Graham of Copeland. We made one of the we did about 15 or 20 CDs. One was music of Martha Graham. We did some fantastic pieces. There's a maybe called Concerto for Double String Orchestra by Martineau with a wonderful whiz-bang piano part. Anyway, by that time the orchestra had transferred to, was playing its concerts in Tully Hall, but that was a peak experience. Another one was, I think we'd already done concerto for string, music for strings, celeste, and percussion, Bartok. I think I'd done it once on the celeste, and then I'd done it once on the piano, and then Paul Zacher from is it Basel? Paul Zacher was a wealthy Swiss who started an orchestra, and he commissioned Stravinsky's Divertimento for strings and heaps of music from Paul Martin and people of that ilk, and it was his commission that resulted in the music for strings, celeste, and percussion. So the word came down from above, which was almost, I guess, that Paul Zacher was going to conduct, 95 years old. So that was a peak experience.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, anybody in the world can play the piano part.
Yes.
I mean, it's very difficult, but there are lots of people who can do that. But I got the piano part, and now I'm bragging.
Yeah, well, no, that's
I'm name dropping.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity to brag.
So playing the celeste was somebody who was way overqualified. The first call keyboard player of the New York Phil, Harriet Lindgreen, and because it's very difficult, that
Yes.
part. And Susan Jollis was the harpist, so it was pretty strong. And I imagine that most of the time you don't get as strong. Those people are kind of central to
Yes.
that piece.
Yes.
And he said that he did tell almost that's the strongest group he ever had
Yes.
for that piece. So that would include
John.
a lot of people.
That's fantastic. Yes.
That was really a highlight, for instance. Yeah.
And we've got to somehow or other get you to Dunedin.
Yes. Well, do you want 2 minute or 5 minute?
5 minutes is good.
5 minutes. The Waterloo Music Festival attracted a young string player from London who had graduated from the Royal College of Music and had discovered that she could extend her 2-year work visa in London if she left the country. So she had a friend who said, "Oh, come on to New Jersey. There's a little music festival." So that's how I met Tessa, the Kiwi connection.
Yes.
And so we met in 1992. I came out here in 1993 in May or April. So her to be looked over and approved or not by her parents. Anyway, the amusing part of the story is that I don't know if it's amusing for Kiwis, but I would call up thinking I'd talk to Tessa, and usually getting the time difference wrong and waking up her father at 2 a.m. or something.
That is amusing.
Yeah. And I'm better on paper than I am talking. I write. And of course, Tessa and I had stayed in touch with letters because, there was no
internet.
Messaging, yeah.
Yeah, and telephone calls were very expensive still.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think it didn't hurt that we corresponded quite well. But when I would get her on the phone, I'd say, "Well, if you made up your mind," that's about marrying me. She had, on her way back to New Zealand from London, she had stopped for a month.
Yes.
And I said, it said at that time, if you were going to come back and live here, what sort of house would you want? So we sort of picked out a house, but she had to go, good Kiwi girls, I can't just stay here. I have to go back home to make up my mind, which I was,
Yeah.
And so I bought the house that she thought was the right house, and I would call once in a while when I got her on the phone. I'd say, "Have you made up your mind?" And she'd say, "Well, no." And then, this is really humorous. She went to visit her. It's a bad thing. You can edit that out. That's a bad thing to say before here. The next story, but she went to visit her sister Carol in Sydney, and I said, "Well, what did you do today?" And she said, "We went shopping." I said, "Oh, that sounds." "What did you find?" "Well, I found a really nice white dress." I said, "Does this mean you've made up your mind?" And she said, "Yes." She was quite into clothes, so. It was just funny that was the catalyst. She realized that
the dress
wanted to wear that dress and be married. So I came back in 1993 in August.
Yes.
And we got married in the Knox Church.
Yes.
George Street.
Yes.
How did I get to New Zealand? Well, I applied for a position at Vic, and I was in the final 3. And Tessa applied for the NZSO, I think a couple of times, and neither of us were successful. But each time, Tessa would say, "If you get this job, would you really move to New Zealand?"
Yes.
or she would say, "If I get this position, will you move to New Zealand?" And I said, "Yeah." So that's how. Well, we sort of decided around 2005, 2004, that we were too busy running around doing jobs in different places, and I was commuting to Vermont to teach at Bennington College, and we realized that it wouldn't be a bad idea to move.
Yes.
So it's sort of, but I think that it was, the notion was set in place quite a few years before. Each time we would go through this.
Yes.
Would we? Could we? And it turned out we could. And when we did, that Tessa could be near her parents, that our children could know their grandparents and their cousins, and things fell into place for us. First, the lecturer in violin left quite soon afterwards. They needed more accompanying. I accompanied the string students, and then ended up, I was asked to tutor species counterpoint, and I said, well, I don't know, I skipped that. I took an entrance exam in this, and I passed the test, so I didn't have to take the course. But I don't actually know it. And anyway, the guy had complete faith and handed me the book and said, well, you can tutor this. So I ended up, both of us ended up on our feet, with
Yes.
students, and at the university with me tutoring, later lecturing in species counterpoint and four-part choral harmony. And here we are.
And
and I met you.
yes, and I met you. And John, what music do you listen to these days? Do you enjoy listening to music?
I don't listen to a lot.
That's interesting.
When I listen to a pianist, it's always a good thing. I find myself trying, it's always invigorating. I enjoy going to a concert where I don't know the music, which doesn't happen too often. Indeed, but I enjoy a string quartet. I enjoy an organ. I went to a terrific organ concert of David Birchlet, and I enjoyed it so much more than I had any idea I would. And I think I should go to more concerts. But do you know the? Who's the? Who's the Russian modern? Denisov, Edison Denisov.
Yes, yes.
His arrangements of the Paganini Caprices with orchestra, I recommend.
Right.
Just that, taking you into a different world with something familiar, and the strange, weird harmonies. That sort of thing I really like. Well, occasionally some Beatles, of course.
Of course. John, on that happy note, we will stop. Thank you so much.
Thank you.